Hi, this is Evelyn Lopez with Earth911.com. We have a fascinating interview today with Peter Mehring, who is with ZEST Labs. Peter, could you tell us what your role is at ZEST Labs and some background of how you got involved with this business?
Sure. Hi, Evelyn, and thanks for having us on. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ZEST Labs. We started a number of years ago with the mission to really help prevent food waste versus just only repurposing. We felt there's an opportunity with food waste being such a large portion of the post-harvest yield, a third to 40% here in the U.S., that something ought to be done to prevent it at the outset and help throughout the food distribution system. Both good for sustainability, but also a key ingredient to helping fight hunger.
Great. Well, I've looked at some of the information on your website, but can you give me an overview of what ZEST Lab actually does and the products that it offers?
Sure. ZEST Labs, our key product is Zest Fresh, and what it does is it uses a combination of sensors at the pallet level of food. So when food is harvested in the field and put on into a box, a carton, or a flat, and built into a pallet, we start monitoring the condition of the product right in the field to understand how it's being handled. And a key component to extending shelf life for all fresh products, whether it's produce, meat, seafood, or dairy, is to quickly cool a product to extend the shelf life beyond 2 or 3 days if it's unrefrigerated. But how quickly it's cooled and how it's maintained and how it's handled throughout the process from the field all the way to the store or restaurant really determines, more than the harvest quality, determines the resulting shelf life. What we do, we track that, and we have software models that determine how the heat and how the handling affect a specific product, and down to the variety and the microclimate the product is harvested in. So we can very accurately predict the actual shelf life. And we found that the majority or the primary contributor to early spoilage in retail and in restaurants and distribution of food is due to an inaccurate estimate of the shelf life, being the date label. Mm-hmm. Date labels are printed and assumed to be uniform. You know, the assumption is everything harvested on the same day has the same shelf life. And roughly a third of the products harvested on that same day has significantly less shelf life, possibly only half of the shelf life that the date label represents. And that disconnect is it's a primary contributor to early spoilage in food distribution. So we address that. We basically come up with a freshness metric or a dynamic date label, and that helps us make better decisions throughout the supply chain, which result in reducing waste by more than half.
Okay, well that is excellent. So what does your actual system look like? So if I am, let's say, a grower, or someone who is involved in warehousing food, how do I use your system?
So we work with the growers very closely because obviously our little sensor, and it's about the size of a business card and maybe a 1/4 inch thick, that gets added in the field by the field workers who do the harvest. And it's very simple, and they train them in half an hour to how to put that label and that sensor on. It's a wireless sensor, so once it's on, you don't need to touch it or do anything. It's automatically sending data back to our cloud.
Does it go onto a bin or something like that? I mean, obviously, it's not going onto each head of lettuce.
No, so it would go inside, the lettuce if it gets put into a bin, or if it gets put into a carton, it'll go inside the bin and inside the carton to be right up against the product.
Okay, great.
And we typically put 1 in per pallet. Mm-hmm. And so depending on what product type it is, it'll get 1 in per pallet, and it's, again, capturing that product data and sending it to our cloud analytics.
Great. So let's take it to the next level. So you have your data chip in the product, and you're moving now from the warehouse to get the product to the retail store. What kind of data do you provide during that process?
Well, so we're always providing the condition of the product, and the primary condition that affects shelf life is temperature. In some cases, other conditions also apply, such as humidity and other conditions of the product. But really, because plants are living things, and so proteins, when they when they are harvested, they continue to respirate and they continue to have a molecular activity. Mm-hmm. And cooling the product significantly to just above freezing slows all that down. But if it's not cooled properly and it's significantly above freezing, maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 45, the respiration rate runs much higher and reduces shelf life. So we track that as a primary contributing factor to determining the actual shelf life, and we do so very accurately. Okay. What we found in doing this, and we've been doing this many years, is that the biggest impact is in the first 24 to 48 hours. It's not actually in distribution. While problems can happen on that long trailer ride going across the country, most of the change and the disparity from the date label happens in the first 24 to 48 hours in how the product is processed from the field before it gets on that trailer. And accounting for that, if we do that properly and at a pallet level, we can then determine should that pallet be put on a truck that's going to go 6 days away across the country, or should it be consumed more locally, or make the decision should it go to a restaurant instead of going to a grocery store. Because a grocery store has to accommodate the consumer, us, having 5 or 6 days of product shelf life for our refrigerator, right, and not just for the store. And so there's a big difference, in making those decisions better early on is really the key to avoiding the waste.
Okay. So that is interesting to me. So the data that you're tracking, it seems like you're giving sort of real-time analysis to your customer. And do you also then provide an opportunity for them to consult with you on sort of overall, like, gee, this one place is where we seem to have our problems again and again and again?
Right. So we definitely look at, the trending of how their operations work in all aspects. And we provide them that data in real time through web dashboards and mobile apps. But that data can tell them, and we help consult to say, here are improvements you could make to improve your shelf life consistency and your quality consistency. And we'll go as far as even help them with their packaging to say how this better preserves the product. And as we do that over the season, we see dramatic improvements in the consistency of the shelf life from what they harvest.
Well, I noticed that you also have a service where you're providing information to, I'll say, the retail and especially food delivery operations. Tell me a little bit about how that works.
Well, it's really the same now, extended to retailers and all the way to the consumer, of making sure product is handled properly all the way until the consumer gets it. For fresh food, it's obviously keeping it cold, but for prepared meals, sometimes you want to make sure they stay hot. And the FDA states of food to be hot and safe has to be above 140 degrees Fahrenheit. When a lot of delivered food cools off, if it goes for more than a couple hours, that starts to become unsafe. And so we have packaging and monitors that ensure the product stays in the safe range above 140 degrees for hot and under 41 degrees for cold.
Okay, interesting. So let me ask you a little bit about this. Tell me an example of how this has been implemented in the field where you think it's just sort of really successful. What has been a relationship that you think this is working exactly the way I had hoped it would be?
Yeah, well, we're based in California, and California is a big growing region, and we work with a number of growers here, both North and South California, and we work with them so they take their product from the field and we track it, lettuces, strawberries, grapes, and what we found, their average shelf life, delivered shelf life, was significantly below what they expected because of that variability. And by using Zest Fresh, we showed them within one season how they not only improved their average shelf life by more than 50%, but in some cases by more than 100% by improving the packaging and the harvest process, the manual process. That benefit, to no additional cost for the grower, and to get that better benefit in terms of shelf life, was shocking to them, and now they love what we do and the visibility it gives. They've made their business more efficient as well. So lettuce growers and berry growers here in California are already enjoying the benefits of Zest Fresh.
Okay. One of the other things I thought was interesting, you have a number of white papers on your website And one of the items that was under discussion was how important this could be in food safety tracking when there's a hazardous outbreak. So let's say you have a listeria or E. coli or other issue that we've seen with some of our lettuce products. Tell me how your product really helps with that.
Yeah, so interestingly, we help in a couple distinct ways. One, first, when product is handled well, the temperature really keeps any growth of any pathogens or bacteria to a minimum. Mm-hmm. So first, just making sure it's handled well helps preserve safety. But second, when there is an issue at the source or in processing, since we have a sensor with every pallet, and each sensor has a unique ID, we can tell where every pallet has come from and where it has gone over time, and as well as how it was handled. And so we can quickly trace if there's a recall. We can tell the grower where all of their contaminated product may be, which today no one does that forward traceability. People are starting to do a better job, what they call backwards traceability. If I have it at the store, where did it come from? Mm-hmm. But really, to do an effective recall, you want to have that forward traceability, because then the grower can quickly contact everyone and tell them to hold the product, possibly even before it gets to the consumer.
Right. Have you thought about having this be information that's available to the consumer too? So let's say I go to the grocery store and there's a layout of produce in front of me. Most produce has little labels on them with the codes for pricing. But if I could scan a code on that, let's say that lemon, and find out where it came from, I would be very interested in that information.
Yeah, so we have piloted a solution to do that, but the retailers are really the face for the consumer. And so we do the back end work for them. We provide the links and the connections. Where did the product come from? When was it harvested? Under what conditions? All that data we provide them available, and they can put it onto their website such that they can present that to their consumers. So we have that all available, and they can just scan the UPC code, very simple, because that tells the manufacturer and the product type, and then we'll tell them where it came from, when, and how it got there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I can see, obviously, the value of this in terms of reducing food waste, which is a huge issue for our country. But are there also some benefits that you can think of in getting more food into communities that need more food, places where there's more food insecurity?
Sure. There's really two things. So as much as we want to solve and prevent all food waste, we know that's not practical. There will always be food waste because people will overorder or not understand demand. There'll be mechanical damage to products. So a number of reasons why there'll still be food waste. What we do with the retailer is, and we connect directly our data to repurposing the food with organizations such as ReFed, where we're a very active member. And what we do is we can tell the organization early that food would be available, that it's not going to make it for sale, that it's not expired or it's not spoiled, but the store no longer it doesn't meet their conditions for sale. And so we can automatically connect to the food repurposing so they can come and collect the food, often a day or two in advance from the product manager or the produce manager at the store, making the call themselves. So we offer, because we have all that data for traceability or for the consumer, we use that same data to connect to food repurposing, food banks and ReFed that really accelerate and smooth out the repurposing of food to feed the hungry. A separate aspect of that's important also, in developing nations, a lot of food can only be consumed locally because they don't have refrigeration and they don't understand good processes to ship the food even 50, 60 miles away. So we've been working with some charitable organizations and the CARE organization in particular to help them using ZEST Fresh at no charge to look at how they can better manage the process of food so they can also build a market to export the food only 50 to 100 miles away, but feed hungry people who, in this case, was from fishing villages in the Philippines, can ship the fish safely inland and feed communities that don't have the direct access. and weren't getting the fish because they didn't trust it. We now can say it's trusted, it's been handled right, and can feed communities further and further away from the source.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really impressive.
Yeah, so there's very different applications in developing nations versus in places like the U.S. and Europe, but all of them help feed the hungry and help get higher yield of our food harvest.
Mm-hmm. Well, what would you say is next in your efforts to make food systems more efficient? How do you build on this success?
Well, we're in the early stages of deployment. We have a notable partner and customer in Costco. It's really rolling us out to higher and higher volume is really our effort for the next 2 to 3 years, to get more uptake with retailers and restaurants. And so everyone really enjoys the benefits of reduced waste and repurposing of the food to the hungry.
That's great. So, Peter, is there anything that we haven't talked about or anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with us?
I think the two things that are really changing in food distribution and what the industry sometimes calls ag tech. We seem to be the first ones really focused on post-harvest ag tech. There's a lot of interest in drones and sensors for pre-harvest, but post-harvest plays a large role in fresh food distribution and really in food waste. And we're interested in promoting that both sides really need to be addressed, higher yield from the field, but efficient use of that yield. And it's often just misunderstood or not identified as really a leading area that needs to be addressed. And we've been doing this for many years. We think there's a good business aspect to improving profitability by reducing waste, but really just the focus of the industry itself on post-harvest handling of food is really, I think, under recognized as the value it could provide to reducing waste.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I've learned a lot from talking to you today, so I really appreciate that. If people want to find out more information about ZEST Labs and about your products, what's the best way to do that? To go to your website?
Yeah, the website, we've taken great care to make the website an educational site so that we have a lot under our resources page in terms of videos and white papers to explain not only how the product works, but the benefits of the product and how it can be applied.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Evelyn.
All right.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.